What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on the 8 HP swap for the Turbo K24 Subaru BRZ, and we are working on the brains of the operation, which is this Seems Legit Garage Turbolamik PCB. So to jump right into this today, we are going to essentially be disassembling the bottom half of our 8 HP transmission. We've got to take the pan off. We have to get the valve body or the mechatronics unit out of there. And we have to essentially remove the stock transmission control unit and replace it with an aftermarket PCB board that will allow our Turbolamik TCU to take over and do all of the super crazy stuff for us. If you guys are excited for this one, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below, subscribe to the channel so you can follow along with all of this. Now let's jump into it. As we are getting into this 8 HP swap, this phase of the build is sponsored by Seems Legit Garage. Seems Legit is the premier provider for all things 8 HP swap for the US. If you need adapter plates and flywheels, if you need transmission mounts, transmission cross members, varying types of transmission control units, they've got everything that you need. Head over their website, check out some of this stuff, and do some research on the 8 HP because these things are sick. Thank you so much to Seems Legit Garage for sponsoring the build. So don't mind too much the car in the background. I don't think I've really mentioned this much on the channel yet, but this is not my BRZ. This is Joey's wide body drift car FRS. If you can, I don't know if you can tell how much front poke his front wheels have, but it's a lot. Full angle kit, the whole 9 yards. He is K-swapping his FRS, basically same situation as mine. So once the 8 HP goes in mine and the CD comes out, he's gonna get the whole CD set up, and we might even have some footage of his swap on the channel as well, depending on when we get around to it. So first things first, we've got to drain all of the fluid out of this 8 HP before we can, pull the pan off and get to work on anything underneath. So let's get this thing empty. And we get transmission fluid right all over the hands. That's just great. So the one on the bottom is a size 10 hex. The one on the side is a size 8. Yeah, then basically we are just going to flip this baby upside down, pull the pan off, start pulling all of the mechatronics out. I believe I'm gonna need some Torx bits for the bolts that actually hold the pan on. I think they're T40s. So let's get to it. All right, so looking at the inside of the pan, obviously we've still got some ATF in here, but the pan, which I know you guys can't really tell, looks pretty dang clean. There's no metal bits and pieces or anything like that. So, wow, that valve body has a lot of Torx bit screws. Holy crap. Well, give me just a moment to figure out which ones of these many Torx bit bolts I need to pull out of here so that I can get this entire valve body out. Okay, I want to say that is all of them. I think it's all of the larger ones that use the T40. So we're going to pull all of those out and see if we can't pull this valve body out of here. Okay, so there's 4 shorter bolts, which go on the 1, 2, 3, and 4 back here. But all of the other bolts from inside of the valve body are these much longer bolts. So I've got a little baggie here. I'm gonna keep looking around here for a little bit to make sure that I'm not pulling off way too much, but I might have to take some of these other smaller bolts out, which I would kind of prefer not to have to do. I want to remove as few bolts as possible. All right, so we just got the valve body pulled off of the main unit. So basically, when I was saying like, I don't know which of these bolts I need to take off, the bigger ones or the smaller ones or what, we just took all of those bolts out. This is the unit that we need to get to. So essentially, right under here, there's this kind of raised square section. That is where the stock TCU lives, and when that's where we're gonna need to do the work. So shout out my buddy Dylan for coming over and helping me do some of this. He has done a lot more soldering than I have, and we're gonna need to solder in the new PCB. So yeah, I'm gonna have to pull this whole black plastic piece off. Again, it's one of those things, I don't know exactly how the heck it's connected, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so in order to get this top piece that houses the TCU off of the valve body, it's relatively straightforward. You don't have, there's no bolts, I don't think there are really any clips, at least getting it off. When we go to disassemble this part itself, there's gonna be a bunch of clips that we're gonna have to remove because there's two pieces to this black plastic case that need to come apart. But in order to get this guy off of the valve body, it's essentially just kind of massaging around the sides, pressing up, because normally this guy is, oh, there's a lot of slick fluid. Normally this guy is like this. And so all of these little pins that you can see here, those little sort of prongs, the two side connectors, those are all going down into the slots here for all of these different solenoids. So basically just kind of press up gently, around, pulling up this way to just get all of the prongs disconnected from the solenoids, and then it eventually just lifts straight up and out. So in order to separate this top black housing, there's a little plastic spot weld here. It's a little brown nub. There's another one under here, so we might have to pull this connector off to get to that one. Then this little black dot, this little raised section of plastic, and this little black dot raised. Yeah, this guy right here. 2, 3 underneath, and 4 underneath. So I'm gonna use a Dremel with a little burr tool and basically just kind of grind this out. And it doesn't need to be drilled all the way through or anything. We're basically just trying to separate the top layer of plastic from the bottom layer. So kind of take it slow, do it gently, and we'll move on. I'm probably gonna take this, clean it up with some brake cleaner, and then we're gonna move over to the table. All right, so after undoing a bunch of all of the little plastic clips that go all the way around, we got the other half of the plastic piece, which is this guy, pulled off just so that we can have access to the PCB itself. So now that we have this, I've sprayed it with a bunch of brake cleaner and sprayed it with compressed air just to try to clean it up, wiped it down. So now we're gonna have to go in with a Dremel and just cut along the top of this to open up this box. And then we're gonna have to be really careful when we do that because we don't want the cutting wheel on the Dremel to go through this and hit the pads on here that we need to solder the new PCB to. So that is the next step. Dylan's getting my cutting wheels set up. It's nice to have an assistant around here. So yeah, we're gonna get this thing cut open and then we'll get to the serious stuff.
Now, how are you cutting it? Like at the edge and just lift this off?
I'm gonna try to keep as much of the sidewall as possible. Okay. So I'm basically just gonna sort of try and go in at the top, and I'll come back and clean it up with the burr.
Yeah, I remember.
Because when I go to squeeze in the potting compound, it needs to have this edge.
Yeah, and
so that it
like encased.
Yeah. All right, so we got all of, the camera wants to focus. We got all of our edges cleaned up reasonably nice. So now we're gonna go through, snip all of these wires and basically just make sure the top of all of these pads are nice and ready to solder. So it's been about a week or so since the last time I kind of touched this. We got into the soldering and we were really struggling. I think it might have just been that the iron I was using just wasn't getting hot enough. It could have been my technique, but one of the things that was definitely causing us some problems is the fact that when I cut this open, around the edges, I left a bit of a lip, right? So you can see at the top here, it has this little lip, this little edge that kind of overhangs. And so that's making it a little bit difficult, especially the ones that are like all the way back in the corners, which you can't really see, but there are pins like right up in here in the corners. And so one, the soldering wasn't really working, and two, it was also just a little bit too tight. I mean, this is all very small, very precise stuff. And I also don't have a ton of experience with soldering, so like, I'm a little kind of nerve-wracked. And also the idea is don't accidentally stick a ball of solder to the side wall, because then you're kind of hosed. So let's see if we can't open it up just a little bit. All right, so here is where we're at. Obviously now there's tons of little metal bits all down in there next to these pins, and I've got to get that cleaned out, because if I try to solder with all of that in there, the solder could touch any of those little metal particles and create a short, and obviously we can't have that. And I can't remember if I've explained this or not, but I have been told by multiple people that you can just spray brake cleaner in here all day and have absolutely no problem, because it's non-conductive. And so basically spraying brake cleaner in this to make sure that every little bit of metal is out of this housing, and then spray it out with a bunch of compressed air to make sure that it's all relatively dry. Okay, so I've got 4 different contact points soldered down. Is now that I have a couple of these done, I'm gonna set my multimeter to ohms, which I did do before I started, but I didn't film it. So basically, what you wanna see is that if you put the ground to the case and you put the positive to one of the pins, it should not beep. So there, I'm touching, and I know you guys can't really see, I'm touching one of the pins, but if I touch the inside of the case, we get a beep. So if I solder these and I touch this to the connections that I've soldered, and if it beeps, I know I screwed it up, and I'll have to figure out a way to fix it. So I'm gonna test the 4 that I've done just to see. Okay, nothing on that one. Nothing on that one. Nothing on that one. Nothing on that one. And so that is if I touch the outside of the case here, it beeps, which you don't want. So when I go and I tap this to one of the connections that I have done here, I do not get a beep. So that's good. It means I haven't completely mucked this up yet. With that, I just need to do that a bunch more times, which I guess I can test the resistance of a couple of these, or the continuity of the ones I've done so far, because I've done about 4 or 5 more. Sorry for kicking the camera. So this is me touching the case. This is me touching each of my connections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I've done 10 of them so far. Apparently, nothing is grounding. If I can get this last one done, I'm gonna be done for the night, because I'm losing my mind, dude. But for now, I think everything has gone okay, but I need to take a break, because I'm like, oh man, I am goofing. My brain is going crazy right now. So anyway, check in tomorrow. All right, we are back. I decided to pick up some soldering paste to see if this will help me out a little bit as opposed to just using flux. This essentially has very small, almost not dissolved necessarily, but it has solder grains in it in addition to the flux. So some additional benefits when it comes to wetting the solder and getting it to flow and getting it to stick and all of that. So there we go. So let's see if this helps. Looks pretty good. I think that just might work. So I'm gonna go around, add some of this solder paste to each one of the contacts, and we will move forward. Okay, so we made some decent progress. The solder paste seemed okay. It didn't seem like amazing. I think the flux was doing just as good of a job, but whew. All right, I think that's gonna get us pretty close. Now, it's gonna still be a little dirty and I'm gonna need to go in with some isopropyl alcohol to like properly clean this up. This is what we're looking like. Obviously not the prettiest job. So over here, we've got pretty solid connections. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but I'm gonna go through and test the continuity again, just to see, make sure that everything is okay. And if I hear a beep on any of these, I'm screwed. The whole thing needs to get desoldered, basically, because there's something underneath one of these pins. So let's cross our fingers, hope that we did this right. Okay, so this is touching to the board, or not to the board, to the frame, which should beep. And it does. So let's go through and touch each one of these connections and see. Nothing. Nothing. That's not good. That is not good. Okay, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 7. It's like 16 of these. Like 16 of these things are shorting. I believe that's what that means. Is it like half of these are grounding out? At least I think that's what that means. I really screwed up, dude. Well, shit. Let's put some gloves on and we'll go in with some isopropyl alcohol and see if that cleans anything up. I kind of knew this was a possibility, doing this myself without any real experience. So, all right, guys. So it's been a couple of weeks. Basically, I was really bummed out that like half of the pins that I had soldered on the PCB were shorting out. And so I decided to take it somewhere to have it professionally redone, basically desolder everything, take it all, clean it out, and resolder it back in. So if you guys remember Phil with ARD, he is the one who actually tuned the BRZ, and ARD does a whole bunch of custom stuff. And so I reached out to him and he said, yes, we can do that. We can take care of it for you, no problem. So I took it over there and I got it back and it works. I've tested it and it's good. So this is what it looks like. This is a different board. So effectively, the way that I was doing it, the solder was leaking, if you want to sort of call it that, but it was getting in between the actual board and the metal pin that I was basically trying to solder together. And so like half of them ended up with a bunch of solder like built up under the board that I couldn't see. So that explains why everything looked fine from the top, but it was no good. And so because of the fact that ARD are Turbolamik retailers, he took the board out that I had and he put in one of the, I guess, supposedly standard Turbolamik boards, and they soldered it all back together. All of the pins are good. And so it passed the continuity test, basically the same thing that I did, where I took my multimeter and, you know, tested for continuity between each of the pins and the board. So it checked all of that, but he wanted me to verify, basically hook it up to the controller and check the error codes to make sure that it was going to be 100% before we epoxy the board in there and reassemble the whole thing, and just kind of, you know, assume that we're good without like knowing 100%. So I'm going to show you guys sort of my very, very basic setup on how I tested this, so that if you guys are trying to do this and you do the soldering and you want to check to make sure that it's good, that you can also do it. So here's my little kind of ghetto setup. This is the wiring harness that came with the Turbolamik TCU that I got from Seems Legit. So what I did was I took the TCU, hooked it up to the main connector, and I connected the little LCD screen. And so just because this is how you read the error codes and also how you tell which driving mode you're in, so that if you're in auto or manual, this will give you all of that information. And so what I had to do, the first way that I tested it and then I took it all back apart because now I have to epoxy the board in. But at first I had just taken the board and the plastic housing, set it on the valve body, and I was trying to test it that way. I took the big plug, connected it into the back, and was trying to test it. The problem is I was getting a bunch of codes that were basically saying that the solenoids, all of these little guys, 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7, there were 5 of them, 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7, were not getting any connection, or they were shorting. It was a short to ground kind of an error code. I also had 2 different codes sensor. It was code 31 and 33 were the other 2 codes that I was getting. 31 is oil temp sensor, error in the gearbox. Nothing else is hooked up currently, so that's fine. As well as a CAN sensor. I don't have this connected to the CAN for the Haltech ECU, so that's expected. But 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7 solenoids shorting to ground was going to be a big problem. So I reached back out to Phil, and he told me what I might have to do is actually take the valve body and put it back into the 8 HP and, you know, just use, say, 3, 4, 5 bolts just to secure it, so that the entire system itself is grounded to the transmission, which is touching the ground and all of that. So once I took the valve body, put it back in, reconnected the sensors, we cleared all of those codes. We did have a couple more of them pop up. We had 13. Fortunately, Turbolamik supplies a list of error codes. 13 was power ground pin, which nothing on this wiring harness is grounded yet, so that's like, okay, expected. The other one was 68, which apparently, I Googled it, it has to do with the grade or the angle leveling sensor. Since it's upside down and touching the ground and it's on an angle, that's no big deal. but it cleared all of those solenoid no connection errors. So basically it's grounded to the transmission, everything's connected, it's good to go. In order to actually get power to the harness, this was something I was like not sure about. So I just have a standard car battery. I took it out of the BRZ and set it here. So as a part of all of the wiring spaghetti, you have 2 power wires, 2 reds, and 2 ground wires. The large red is your main power. The small red is your 12 volt ignition. You take both of those and you can just hold it on the positive terminal. And then you have 2 black ground wires, a larger one and a smaller one. Hold both of those on the negative, and then your LCD screen should have power. It'll light up, it'll read all of the codes. That is all of that information. 2 reds to the positive, 2 blacks to the negative. Try to, sort of verify that everything with that PCB is going to be good before you do what I'm about to do, which is using the potting compound to solidify everything inside of the little metal housing. So let's jump into that. Okay, and so as a part of the kit that I got from Seems Legit, they sent me the MG Chemicals 2-part 1-to-1 epoxy. It comes with a basically self-mixing straw. So what you're gonna want to do is get a glass, or if you don't want a glass, basically something to set this housing on that is going to basically be perfectly level. Just like so. It's just gonna sit perfectly flat because this apparently takes a really long time to cure, like overnight, even potentially 24 hours. So what we're gonna do is pull off our cap, 2-part epoxy. We're gonna grab the self-mixing straw, set this on here if I can, set that down in there, twist to secure. Squeeze out a little bit just to, so you can see how it sort of self-mixes. Squeeze out a little bit just on the bench top here, just to make sure that we're good. And now I'm gonna basically just fill her up. I'm gonna go around the sides first, and then I'm gonna fill it all the way pretty much to the top. And that leaves me with about, I don't know, 1/3 or 1/4 left in this little syringe. So over the next couple of hours, I'm just gonna come back. If any bubbles develop, I'm gonna come back and just kind of hit those with a lighter just to try and get rid of any surface bubbles that might be forming. So yeah, we're just gonna let this set overnight, and we'll come back when this is looking more finished. All right, so it's been a couple of days. I actually just went ahead and gave it the weekend basically for that potting compound to set. So let's take a look at what it looks like. So here is the PCB now. It's nice and basically, if you can hear that, fully set. It's like hard plastic at this point basically. Now, because of the fact that this is a slightly different board from the SLG board, it had those 2 holes in the middle. Some of that potting compound sort of sunk down into the bottom, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it did slightly leave a couple of these. You can see this little silvery bit right here, this little silvery bit right here. Those are a couple of the solder contacts that are slightly exposed, but it shouldn't be a problem because this, which is the cover, if I can get it right, this is the cover that's going to go over top of this to make sure that nothing gets inside of this housing. So we're going to go ahead and slap this guy right on top of here, and then we're just going to start reassembling the entire 8 HP. So now all we do is put all of the bolts back in. I did check the torque spec on these. There is technically a sequence in which you're supposed to torque these bolts, and they're torqued to 8 Newton meters. I don't know the conversion in my head. I'll put it here on screen somewhere. I'll check. That's what I'll do. I'll torque them in sequence. We'll do all of that properly, and then we'll get the oil pan put back on. The oil pan does have a rubber gasket that goes all the way around, kind of similar to like a valve cover gasket almost. There was no RTV on this to begin with, so I will not be RTVing this thing back together. Torque them all, both the big ones and the small ones. Oil pan goes back on. Torque spec is the same, 8 Newton meters all the way around. And then we'll be good to go. And that's gonna wrap it up for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you potentially gained something if you're doing your own 8 HP swap, or if you're just here to enjoy the series, maybe learn a little bit of something along the way. Either way, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you don't mind, if you could give this video a thumbs up down below, it really helps me out. If you wanna follow the build, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see pretty much once this is done, car comes in, engine comes back out. I'm not excited to put this thing back on jack stands, but it is what it is. So make sure you subscribe if you want to follow along. And until next time, build your dreams.